So the only question here is, from what I recall, will this stream drop? So we're going to give this a shot here. If you've been following, we had some glitchiness, so I'm going to see if we're past it. Okay, we're back on audio streams. Looks like the channels are turning on. Okay, excellent. We should be good to go. So I kind of think we were jumping around a lot of different topics. Wakasoto, thank you for joining. We were talking about Luigi Mangione and how he made $300,000, which is far less than what Daniel Penny made. But how these two characters each represent the interests of the opposing factions. Like you got Kyle Rittenhouse, and he's kind of juxtaposed, contrasted with Greta Thunberg. Well, I would say that Luigi Mangione and Daniel Penny also represent the two poles. Luigi representing, of course, class warfare. Rich guy, of course, who gives up his wealth to uh, fight the rich, steal from the rich, give to the poor. Robin Hood, class warfare. And on the other side, Daniel Penny is representing the traditional America, MAGA versus liberals and their corruption. And of course, he's a vigilante on the subways. What's up, Trimmin B3000, Autohook Strong, Jungle Jim, thank you for joining. And each side thinks the other guy's a criminal and their guy's a hero. So the right wing's like, yeah, Daniel Penny's a hero for strangling that guy in the subway. And then the left is like, yeah, our guy's a hero for murdering that CEO. And they're never going to let that go. I mean, they're still hyping this thing up. They're still a big fan of him. But $300,000, I'm not that impressed. Like Daniel Penny got a bunch more. Although Kid Rock ended up giving Daniel Penny like quite a bit. I was watching a live stream of Kid Rock last night, and they were doing "Proud Mary," and they were singing the song, and he's like clapping his hands above his head, and the audience wasn't clapping enthusiastically enough, and he threw a fit and he walked off stage. What's up, Psy Girl? Saint Luigi the Just. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually seeing Luigi posters around town, and it says no war but class war. And I said it from day one, from the very beginning. I said this is the Joker class war, kill the rich narrative, and to a T he has fit that. And then of course it has all the ties in to Netflix, the madness. So just a heads up, the last computer, you know how it is with these things, gremlins. But I replaced a computer, and the one I replaced it with was not 100%, and it was kind of choppy. So now I took out an older computer, I kind of cleaned it up a bit, and I put some new OBS software, updated some drivers, and it seems like this one might do the trick. And if this one is glitch free, then it's clear sailing. And it opens up the possibility of reinstating the 24/7 stream. Or maybe even just, it doesn't have to be 24/7, but for large swaths of the day, I'd like to have just like archives being played. Girl says Lauren Boebert might be marrying Kid Rock, according to TMZ. Everything she does is for attention, and both of them seem to need that kind of external validation. She was the one who was vaping in a theater house when they were watching Beetlejuice. Not as big a scandal as Vapegate, but that was a Vapegate. It was also Gropegate. She was getting groped, and then as she's being escorted out, she says, "Do you know who I am?" But I'm almost convinced that this was a PR stunt. That for her, it's a win to be seen getting groped on camera in public. It doesn't make sense to you, but if you understand the world of Lauren Boebert and uh, what's her name, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, why hasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tanya Hardinged Lauren Boebert? Like that would have been a nice twist, like a good repeat. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. If I was writing the scripts, I would have MTG taking out, and she would be doing it herself. She wouldn't be outsourcing it to her husband. It would be direct. Joined by Thirst for Truth. Thanks for joining. Esteban, yes, we're back. Lean Dion, Mazel. Any attention is good attention, yes. Whether they can get it from being individuals you admire or they do something admirable, or they throw a tantrum. These things all work. And I think that Ye was disappointed that walking um, his wife around on a leash nude wasn't getting him the attention it used to. Like nobody cares anymore. And his response to not getting any kind of attention was to go on a 24-hour all caps rant on X. Just total self sabotage. Yeah, Thirst. I saw that Kid Rock walked off the stage because the crowd wasn't clapping enough. Yeah, what's going on with that? It was a very low, like that performance. If I was there, I would have fallen asleep like mid clap. And have you ever done like lots of overhand hand claps? Like that's actually a punitive thing, and it's an exercise you do to, like in air assault school, overhand overhead hand claps. They're painful, and after 30 seconds of that slow song and the slow clapping, I don't know. Girl says, I want to sponsor an MMA cage match between Nancy Mace and the new congressional rep from Delaware. Yeah, so I didn't do a thorough breakdown of the rituals for the Super Bowl, but I watched it and I wanted to get some more background. I listened to an interview with Kendrick Lamar from before, and it was kind of interesting. I didn't know much about him, but I'm looking more into him, and I'm also what I was noticing though is you did have what I said, the female dressed dancers dressed in scarlet, even the scarlet in the hair, and this on the cross, and the white cross edged in red, all rose cross, Rosicrucian rose cross symbolism, which is very consistent, as I'd pointed out. Uh, you had Rihanna in red, dancers in white. You had Alicia Keys in red, Usher in white with the Phoenix, and so you had a lot of analogous symbolism. You had Squid Games, War Games. I know there's some more to it, but at a minimum, I expected to see that Rose Cross, the Rosicrucian, the Great Rite, and the representative of the priestess, the what they call the Scarlet Woman. And in this case, I think I don't know her name, but there was a dancer, and I think even her whole wardrobe was red, a scarlet. Girl says the opening performances were all 1619 Project. See, that's what I was wondering. I'll have to watch it closely because I want to know if there's a connection here with that. Because I happen to think that 1619 and 1776 represent the poles of this tug of war, and this is what they're colliding together. And if you haven't seen and by the way, the Obama's production company Higher Ground, who did leave the world behind, which references 1619 and it's about the 1619 collision with 1776. Uh, their production company was supposedly a beneficiary of some of the money, as U.S. aid. They're doing all these cuts, but who wasn't? I think they said Laura Loomer was getting money from it. Girl says the theme of this year's Super Bowl was murdering, crash, vehicle, and race. Hmm. Yeah, well, I was trying to understand where he was coming from with this, and I need to do a little more research. But I look at this as an alien anthropologist, and I think we need to look at it in the context of all the previous Super Bowl performances, and what is the overall message here? Because there's layers to it, and you can't separate the entertainment spectacle from the mainstream news events. The opening ceremonies reenacted that bloody crash in NOLA. Right, isn't it? There was a scene where everybody fell dead while they're doing their dance performance, like they dropped dead. And then previous, yeah, you did, of course, you had the truck running over people. I want to watch it a couple more times because I need to get the lyrics. I'm pretty sure the lyrics are probably the most important part. But the race stuff, the critical race theory, is the leftist critique of the West, of America, systemic racism. And the NFL has really highlighted this ever since Colin Kaepernick and the kneeling. And of course, Kaepernick was the quarterback during the Blackout Bowl, where it went dark for 33 minutes, Super Bowl 47. So we've talked about him in this context, but he started this kneeling during the national anthem, which has a great deal of significance to leave the world behind, and subsequent psyops, related psyops. We're talking about BLM and the riots following Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd. And we've done a breakdown of their names before, but just a quick recap. Derek Chauvin was a reference, I believe, to, well, the hangman of the Western chauvinists. Derek is named for a famous hangman who hanged 3,000 people. And there's a part of a crane, the part of the gallows, that is named for him, the Derek. And that's significant because, of course, 3,000 is a very 9/11-y number, but he asphyxiated George Floyd for 8:46. That's the story. 9/11 kicks off at 8:46. The sun set in the Twin Cities that day at 8:46. So they've connected these events. But the name Derek has a hangman connotation. And then the BLM was contrasted with, on the other side, Proud Boys, who were proud of the West. They were called Western chauvinists. So I look at Derek Chauvin as the face of Western chauvinism. Derek Western chauvinism. You are either on Team Derek or Team George Floyd, which doesn't even make sense if you look at how many alt media types and on the far right are against cops, but now they support this cop. But the other connection here is, of course, BLM, front group, or rather vanguard of a revolution, a revolutionary movement, Marxism, class warfare. So this was seen as the West, and of course a police officer being the defender of the elite in this sense, kneeling on the oppressed. I can't breathe has also been applied to the climate. What is the West doing to the climate? Destroying the atmosphere, destroying the earth. We can't breathe. So they've made these correlations. And I can't breathe is an anagram for a better China, by the way, which has some other connotations as well. But, suffice it to say, the name George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, these names, these are all, in my view, characters in a ritual drama where they're telling the story writ large in such a way that you get the picture. So the riots are on a clearly divided line. What are they standing against? And Luigi Mangione really highlights this division. Let's see here. Conscious Reality says it's purposely done to make us think it's about race, but I see it's more about government and civil rights. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I do think it's in this wilderness of darkness, in this state of relative ignorance compared to the programmers. We're not supposed to know there is a program. If you notice the programming, they call you crazy. They say you're a conspiracy theorist. If you notice the programming, you are apopheniac. You're an apopheniac, or you're in some way it's discrediting to call out these connections as anything more than coincidence. But the coincidence theorists, or the ones who say it's all coincidence, cannot really confront the sheer volume of all of these highly coordinated coincidences. And the go-to response would say, oh, well, you're just cherry picking from the past and you're finding things that match your bias. And I'm like, you might have made that claim 5 years ago, but we have been so up to speed with the latest elements of programming and the related news events that we've coined a new phrase here, concurrent programming. And that the frequency of concurrent programming, the accuracy of it, that goes beyond any claim that we're just cherry picking. Like, no, this is actually direct correlation. But you would never notice how concerted the mind control is and how global it is and how actually it's all built into one worldview. You wouldn't even see it if you were focused on these minor divisions, left versus right, the racial stuff, the identity politics stuff. It's the perpetual war. What's up, Bach Precision? Thanks for joining. We had a mild disruption, but no big deal. I just jumped ships, so I think we're good. Conscious Reality says, I explained how they're distracting us by the race division. It's more about omitting sovereignty. Yeah, I want to also point out too, so the black versus white dialectic is not even about race. It's about alchemy, and it's about the poles, and it's about the dialectics. They create these poles and they play them against each other. Hegelian dialectics. And race just happens to fit into that program, especially here in America. But I think it's always been about other things. Because once you have any kind of homogeneity, you can just find another reason to divide people. It can be surely it's just be on philosophical grounds. But more importantly, though, if you look at all these different psyops, like we talk about George Floyd, but all these other related events, like think the Rodney King beating, you find the same patterns of fakery and hoaxery and symbolism. I've been looking at these things for some time, and it's so consistent. Go back to Jackie Robinson, Mr. 42, Rosa Parks, 42, when she's at the back of the bus. Then you've got the Rodney King, beaten for 1 minute 19 seconds, hit 33 times. That whole event was replayed almost blow for blow when they beat Tyree Nichols. And then that event, of course, highly significant throughout the year of 2023, foreshadowed. They cloned Tyrone, brought Jamie Foxx back into the picture. Jamie Foxx, uh, one of the early celebrities to endorse BLM, but then he was also Django Unchained, which was one of these movies that had concurrent programming in the form of Christopher Dorner, 33-year-old cop who felt that the systemic racism in the LAPD would prevent him from ever getting promoted, and he goes on a killing spree, and then they incinerate him. These stories go back, but they've been consistently building up this narrative of the West and systemic racism and oppression resulting in these martyrs. And they've correlated these martyrs with the Masonic myth of Hiram Abiff. And this is all code in the names, like we talked about quite often. Tyree Nichols, Tyreek Hill, they clone Tyrone. These are all code names and they always reaffirm the same story, the same myth. But this consistency with building up this martyr is meant to create this narrative that they've effectively created. And George Floyd kind of epitomized it. But this is why I thought Kendrick Lamar's appearance at the Super Bowl was notable, because he's consistently represented the Black Christ archetype. And so what is the symbol of this? Ultimately, I think what it represents is that if you were to indict the West for its main crime, its main sin, leave the world behind references this 1619, the year of the white lion, bringing the first ship from the transatlantic slave trade. So America's original sin, the boat hitting America, the emergency broadcast signal 1619 was basically saying this is America's reckoning with its past. So the collision is 1619 versus 1776. And 1776 was well represented on January 6th. That's represented by Trump, by MAGA. And I think this is why you see so often in all of the predictive programming this connection between this contrast between Obama and Trump. Obama surely represents 1619 as much as Trump represents 1776. And I can say this because Obama was behind Leave the World Behind, which again, the 1619 project references go deep, but thank you very much. Appreciate that. Putting some gas in the tank. Thirst for truth. Bach Precision says the "why can't we just get along" catchphrase from the Rodney King beatings was meant to be bitter satire. What's interesting about the Rodney King beating is the guy who filmed it, his name was George Holliday. He was recording James Cameron, who was filming Terminator 2. Well, what's Terminator 2 about? It's about an evil cop. So the evil cop, the villain cop, that's kind of a new thing. So they were subverting this image of the cop and turning him into the bad guy for a movie. And I'm looking at it, so I'm like, okay, the guy who was filming James Cameron's movie was just strolling along and he happened to see the beating of Rodney King. That's the story, if you can believe it. And then that goes viral, and then it starts the riots. So in a way, you can kind of see how there's this direct pipeline between James Cameron and the Rodney King beating and the riots, which then, and this goes a little deeper. That's why I mentioned that the Rodney King beating was 33 seconds, 1 minute, 19 seconds, 33 hits of a baton over 119, because there's a deeper connection to James Cameron. Like, I would even go so far as to suggest that if there was a director to the LA riots, it would have been James Cameron. Because there's a direct correlation between James Cameron's work with Avatar 2 and the Cop City riots with BLM in Atlanta. So the Cop City riots, if you don't recall, Cop City was this 80-acre training ground. They were going to level this forest and build a training ground for cops. And the environmentalists were against it. They say if you do this, Atlanta is going to flood. You're killing Mother Nature for what? For cops, to spread the capitalist system, which is destructive to Gaia. And there were a lot of environmentalists who were like, literal tree huggers living in the trees. And they rioted against the cops by throwing rocks and sticks. The leader was shot and killed. So here you have the cops killing an environmentalist at this Cop City protest in the forest. Well, this happens as James Cameron's Avatar 2 is in theaters. So Avatar 2 is about how Gaia's dead. So the humans need to find a replacement. So they're moving to Pandora, which is this jungle moon. And going to Pandora to harvest the resources is the main story. And the humans who arrive are basically like Marines, who are like cops in a way. And they show up and they confront the native Na'vi who live in the trees. And they go to war. And the Na'vi have sticks and spears and arrows and rocks. And they're fighting the modern Marines. And they're losing. And so this is kind of analogous to what's happening on the ground. And it's called Avatar 2 Way of Water. And so Way of Water is a reference to Atlantis. These are like Atlanteans. So Atlanta, and then of course the Way of Water, has this connection. And then you have the fight over the habitat, over the environment. And I've done a deep dive into Avatar 2. I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's a combination of Dances with Wolves and Fern Gully. But the overall theme here is that the West needs to be put down because it's not in touch with Gaia. It's going to destroy Gaia. It's a parasitic system that will destroy any ecosystem because it doesn't recognize that nature is conscious. And so this is tying back to the environmentalists in this connection with Cop City. And if you look at the leader of the environmentalists, the one who was killed, they said he was shot through the palms of his hands. So there's your connection to a Christ-like martyr, like stigmata. And they were showing pictures of his home, and he's sitting around in these books, and he's got the book called Goodnight Moon, and then next to that one, Where the Wild Things Are. So like put these two things together. Goodnight Moon. Well, Pandora's a moon. It's a jungle moon. And then Where the Wild Things Are is a children's book. And it's about this child who puts on a wolf costume and he becomes king of the beasts in the jungle. And if you've seen Avatar 2, the main character puts on the Avatar suit and he becomes a king over these wild things in the jungle. So I'm just pointing out here that the Cop City riots and the whole protest that started around the martyrdom of this character was a merging of BLM with environmentalist interests. They even had this big tree they brought out shaped like a BLM fist, similar to the World Tree in Avatar 2. There's quite a lot. We covered these things, but my contention here is that these Hollywood directors who supply a lot of the predictive programming that go into these world stage events are also involved in the staging of the events. Like I think James Cameron was involved in Cop City riots, LA riots, and definitely 9/11. Let me go through your comments. RoboCop takes place in Detroit. Interesting. RoboCop, is that Cronenberg? Great director, by the way. Girl says all hyper-realistic exercises are fully documented and videotaped. Mason Free says Drake and Kendrick is just the reenactment of Tupac Biggie. Yeah, that's the reason I haven't done too much commentary on it yet. Like I'm looking at the trappings of it, the occult trappings, and I know there's more to it, but I'm trying to understand this Drake Kendrick thing because it's kind of inside baseball if you haven't been following these two. And Drake has been brought up quite often in like the last year or so, but I haven't really kept up with him. All right, let's move on. Girl says all those crisis actors waving their Mexican flags and prepared signs and shouting slogans, cast of thousands, all paid for. I think there are legitimate protest movements, and there are plenty of useful stooges, but I don't think that these things exist without money. It's just politics. Politics, was it money is the mother's milk of politics. If you don't have money, you don't have these gatherings, and it's true for rioters. You got to pay them. James Cameron also gave us Terminator. Yeah, I was bringing up Terminator 2 because when they were filming Terminator 2, this bystander was recording it, and then he inadvertently records the Rodney King beating. So it was his film. And so on the same tape where you have backstage Terminator 2 evil villain cop, you have real life evil villain cops beating Rodney King. And then I brought this up because in the beginning of 2023, you had the Tyree Nichols beating, which was compared to Rodney King. It looked like it was directed by the same, it looked like the same shot. And the protests attracted Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter. So you have MLK, you have King, Rodney King, Martin Luther King, and then they had the funeral service at Mason Temple where MLK gave his final speech. Joe Santos says there's a side story of Serena Williams doing the Crip Rock on the stage at the halftime show, and her sister got shot by a gang, so everyone is freaking out about that. Thank you for that. Joined by Math Powerland says, I'm the friendly elf, you're the kind wizard. Joe Saunders says her last name Williams, Will I am. Well, at the Chris Rock slap, the getting slapped by Will Smith thing, like Will Smith slaps Chris Rock. Serena Williams was there in the audience, and Venus Williams. No, it was Venus Williams was there. Interesting characters, and I'll have to go look at her role there because I thought her role at the slap event might have had some significance. She was wearing green, and the name Venus. Jade, Will Smith's wife, he was slapping Chris Rock over the comment made about her hair. She's wearing a green dress, and Venus is associated with the color green and copper, much like Mars is red. All the planets have their metal associations, but the Venus references turned out to be really interesting in the context of the slapping of Chris Rock because the husband of Venus ends up getting kicked out of Olympus. There's a story that we thought might correlate here. But their names are highly significant, their dresses, it's all just a cult ritual, in my opinion. Even that slap was staged and fake. There's a video of Will Smith giving lessons on how to fake slap people. Like before that event, here he is on stage teaching, like an acting class, how to simulate a slap. Granger Man says Macklemore has a new song that is promoting a revolution. I'll have to take a look because when Luigi Mangione did that thing, I said at the time that the purpose to this is likely to incite leftist activism against the encroaching fascism. And there was no reason for them to riot, no matter how many outrages, etc., during Biden's reign. But now that Trump's back, they have nothing to lose. And if you've looked at The Madness on Netflix, it's definitely about Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, of course, gets killed. It's basically a story of class warfare. And they're getting the left ready for another bout because, and I would also argue it's because of the Joker connection. If you remember Joker 2019, it comes out, kill the rich movement. They all put on the clown masks and then they go riot against the cops and everything to burn down the system. That's kind of the story that the CEO killer brings about. This Luigi Mangione brings out the same story. And it had so many parallels with the Joker. I thought this has got to be foreshadowing another summer of riots. So if you're a crisis actor, it's probably going to be a great earnings for you this summer. Bach Precision says, from The Guardian today, John Oliver to Jon Stewart, let me be the first to welcome America to its monarchy era. Right. And they're calling Musk the fourth branch of government. And for these people who really believe that Musk is this big villain, it must be really scary. But to me, it's like Musk is to the left what Bill Gates is to the right. And I think these are both characters that are just the billionaires that scare each side. I mean, isn't it interesting and how contradictory, how incompatible are these different versions of things where Bill Gates is a savior if you're on the left, but he's a destroyer and a depopulator if you're on the right. Elon Musk is a savior if you're on the right, and he's the end of the world if you're on the left. Like they can't both simultaneously be destroyers and saviors. It's like it's too bifurcated, too split. Reality doesn't work this way. It shouldn't be choose your own apocalypse. There should be one objective reality, but there isn't. Drinkwater says their sister got shot by mistake by a Crip member trying to take out a rival blood, and she was in the crossfire. Okay. Conscious reality. Oh, great one. It's all alchemy. It took place at Caesar's Colosseum. Had the PlayStation control, which is the four elements, and they did the Hail Master Mason signal and the five-step walk to Solomon's tomb. I'm glad you brought up Caesar's Colosseum because Megalopolis, which is Megalopolis, Megalon, make Rome great again. As we've talked about many times, that latest movie by Francis Ford Coppola is about Trump. It's about now. And in it, he is represented by the character Caesar. And he, of course, gets the head wound, comes back 3 days later. But it all does correlate to Trump. But the Caesar connection is worth bringing up here because when Trump was shot on 7/13, that's Julius Caesar's birthday. Julius Caesar was assassinated. And there was a play, Julius Caesar in the Park, where they had Trump as Caesar and they killed him. And Laura Loomer jumped on stage to protest it. And I guess we could add to it, a day before the Trump shooting event, Harrison Ford was in that trailer for Captain America Brave New World where he plays the president who's at the podium. He gets shot at and they push him to the ground and he survives. And his birthday is 7/13. So the Caesar connection, very interesting. Ready or Not says, sure, that's a point. Her sister is from Compton, just like Serena. Serena was a Crip walking on Drake's grave at the Super Bowl. Drake made money off a song he put out about Serena after they broke up. Okay. Roxy W says the Smith Rock was copied from a movie almost word for word. No, well, there's a fake version that a lot of people fall for, but there is a movie called Doctor Dolittle where Jade does play an actress who is made fun of by a comedian on the stage, and her boyfriend goes and confronts him, and the comedian is acting very much like Chris Rock. And that goes deeper because that movie Doctor Dolittle was followed by some interviews where Jade had said that the wig they made her wear was dehumanizing. That they made her wear a wig that wasn't her natural hair. And so there was a bigger conversation about natural hair, and the Crown Act was a conversation at the time. And the whole point of the slap was her hair was made fun of, or her lack thereof. So yeah, there's certainly a lot there to suggest it was predicted. Drink Water says Serena did a Crip walk in Wimbledon. Snoop does Crip walk. It's a Compton thing, not just related to gangs. It's an iconic dance since the 70s. Yeah, that could be more likely it, because the song, I'm not sure if it's Not Like Us, but one of these songs has a video. It's all about like Los Angeles culture, and I think there might be something to it along those lines. Crips represent the left. Blue left says conscious reality. Yeah, I think so. I think there's some interesting um, rabbit trails to look down when it comes to gangs and the Masonic type symbolism attached to it. One Mason told me that they're the biggest gang. What's up, Copaesthetic? He said, Matthew, your research flat earth billboard was legendary. Yeah, that research flat earth became, and probably is, the most prolific flat earth meme. Research flat earth. It's not the earth is flat. It's just a suggestion, research. But do your own research is kind of a trap if your research only consists of breadcrumbs put in a box set aside for you. It's like do your own brainwashing. All right, we've already received, Nutty Professor, not Dr. Doolittle. Thank you, Ready or Not. It wasn't Dr. Doolittle. It was Nutty Professor. Joe Santos says, I found a group of people one night on YouTube talking about how the Bible is written by Julius Caesar and he changed his name to Jesus Christ and it's all made up by him. JC, yeah, in a way I think so. If you look at the way that Trump has achieved apotheosis, Trump Trumpianity, Trump Christ, I mean, they do worship him. The Trumpanzees, they see him as a god. This has been a thing for some time. I don't know if I mean, if you haven't followed this, the Q movement believed that JFK was the second coming, and the deep state stopped him. And they thought Trump was working for JFK Jr., who faked his death, and together they're going to reinstate the bloodline of Christ, which is the bloodline of Kennedy. That story never made sense to me because they don't care about RFK. It's like they got the same blood. But this Christification of Donald Trump is a thing. And there are people who pray to Donald Trump. And this is not just a fringe thing. They do believe that God put him there. And I think this deification of our leaders is by design. I do think that there's an element here of religion, of stateolatry. And I think one of the tricks of the elite is to get you to worship them while thinking that you're worshiping a higher power. I think there's something to it. Something as far as like, it's not an accident that a lot of people are deifying Trump. It's by design. This is anthropology. This is what I think Margaret Mead referred to as weaponized anthropology, or this term where you control a large group of people by infiltrating the street level culture, by by manufacturing its culture, by co-opting it. And I think that's what they've done. I think they've created a grassroots or an appearance of grassroots with the Q movement. And what they've done is they've created a mythos, and they have essentially brought about this appearance of a messianic character. And people 100% fall for it. All right, let's continue. Crack Nita 33 says, I need food from beyond the ice wall. This slow poisoning is making me tired and grouchy. Wear a mask. The chemtrails will make you apathetic. Someone was accusing me of covering up for chemtrails, and it's like I'm not even really covering it up. I make no secret about it. Whenever I debunk chemtrails, Delta Airlines give me a few thousand frequent flyer miles. Like I can fly anywhere free because I help keep the secret. And if you believe in chemtrails or you believe in climate change, you have no business flying on an airplane. Like if you do, you should feel really bad about it. All right, let's see here. Let's go through what did we get into earlier? We were talking about, oh yes, 343 fire department members died on 9/11, and 343 exactly also died of 9/11 sickness. That's an interesting coincidence. Kanye West has been dropped by his talent agent. Again, more for the grievance politics and claim to be oppressed. Why doesn't he go out and say that Sandy Hook was a hoax? Why doesn't he go out and say nobody died on 9/11? Like, why is he throwing away his whole career making these pointless, worthless statements that don't go anywhere? Like, if he was really wanting to be a wrecking ball, he'd be auto-hoaxing the MSM. That's how you know these individuals are all controlled. Even his spiraling is controlled. All right, let's see what's happening in the comments. So we were talking about the recent plane crashes. And so there's a movie called, I think, Yellow Jacket, and it's about a plane crash, people surviving after, but it's got a new season. That's just opportunistically being put out there. You've got Carry On and Flight Risk. So we were talking about these various movies, and then you have the drill during which the helicopter crash happens with the plane. And prior to this, you had the nuke movies, and then LA gets the fires. So anyway, this is just a consistent thing. But the presence of predictive programming in drills should automatically take it out of the realm of real until proven fake. Especially when you find multiple drills. Not just the helicopter was on a continuity of government doomsday drill, but there were drills being done out on the water for ice mission or ice rescues, also right before. Yep, Braveheart 84 says, I've seen a new plane crash every day since that movie came out. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Flight risk. And when that movie was coming out, I saw the ad and I said it's coming out the same week as the Kobe crash, Challenger explosion, the week of aerial immolations. I said this before, and I didn't want to watch the movie. I wanted to watch Companion about this like robot doll that this guy jailbreaks and then it becomes all Terminator on him, and it's a horror movie in a way, but it might be a deeper statement about feminism. I wanted to watch that one, but I ended up instead watching first this Flight Risk. And I only watched it because I knew that if I want to keep up with the news, I need to watch what's in the movies because life imitates the entertainment they feed us. Well, not real life, but the simulated events. Psyops imitate art. And again, we've been vindicated. See, we have an accurate model. And that's what we're talking about here is how we process information that comes from media. And I don't tell people what to believe. I just make the case that it's better to be an active versus a passive consumer of media. A passive consumer is a true believer, takes it all on faith, unless something contradicts it. But newsflash, they're never going to have a segment where they say, oh, by the way, we were wrong about this, and this was a drill, and this was a psyop, and this was fake. They never do that. You know why the news will never discredit any of its own fake stories? Because their fake stories are the driver of all the non-fake stories that follow in its wake. They use the big lies to guide the rest of the news narrative. It's a linchpin. It's like on an arch, you got the keystone. It's that stone at the top, and it's just like everything's dependent on it. That is the focal point. And the fakery is not the majority of the news because obviously you can't fake it all. But if you fake the stuff that everyone cares about and focuses on, yeah. They lie by commission, they lie by omission, by selectivity. It's the lie world order. Someone suggested I need to watch Severance. Has anyone seen it? Severance. We were talking about Gabby Petito. Blank Check said, the Gabby Petito story was scripted news, not real, but I don't understand the purpose. Some type of predictive programming. She was declared missing on 9/11/21. This is interesting. So he's asking for what our ideas are. What is the point of it? And I suggested it was an enactment of the mysteries of Persephone. So the mystery schools have this. And by mysteries, we mean ceremonies that replay mysteries of life in some personified way. Like, for example, the story of the death of and resurrection of Hiram Abiff. It's a mystery school play. In this case, it's about the kidnapping of Persephone. And I thought this was the case because they found her body as we got closer to the autumn equinox. And the way she was depicted in media, here she is with her mural, and notice her right leg, one step forward. She's got wings. Compare it to Virgo. In Greek mythology, the constellation Virgo, often associated with Persephone. And so the myth of Persephone being kidnapped and taken into the underworld all ties into the autumn equinox as we enter into the darker half of the year. So it's all just astrotheology and story. But the mysteries are where they reenact them on the stage. And what I'm saying is that this particular mystery was reenacted on the world stage. Well, Valerie says this is also the theme of the new show Severance, which I have not seen. And by the way, Gabby Petito was in a Sandy Hook video. Maggart4822 says fake until. Yep, fake until proven real. And if they have a problem with that, they need to get in a new line of work. If you're in the media, your job is to provide facts to support your claims. If you're telling me that my standards of evidence are too high for you, you're in the wrong line of work. Your job is to convince me. My job isn't to carry your burden of proof. I'm not a propaganda mule. Eccentric View says it's a must. Severance is a must. Jungle Gym, best show on right now. Okay, I'll check it out. I'm trying to figure out what to watch. I've been trying to keep up with the latest in all the programming. The Sandy Hook video was called I don't know what it was called. It was some music video, but she came from the same pool of actors and actresses. And the story was interesting. The guy who kidnapped her, his name was Brian Laundrie, like brain laundry. We took it to mean brainwashing, but the story of the kidnapping and then the tie-in with the equinox, the Virgo stuff, Persephone stuff. Yeah, I thought this might be some kind of morbid play, which has a deep meaning to the initiates. And by initiates, we mean those who've been given the insider interpretation. And if you don't have that insider interpretation, then you won't understand the subtext, the esoteric. That's actually one of the reasons why I named the tabloid Insider. Here, if you have it on the screen here, you have the cyborg penguin with the hot skull. Hot skull is a reference to a TV series where there's a mind virus going around. So everyone has to wear earplugs. And if you don't wear the earplugs, you catch the mind virus, and it can be detected because your brain heats up. And if you carry too many mind viruses, you have hot skulls. And the main character in this one is absorbing all the mind viruses, but he's not going crazy. And he becomes therefore a threat to society because he could spread these mind viruses to anybody. He's a mind virus super spreader. He could incite something, so they have to deal with him. But anyway, Insider is kind of a reference to, of course, the idea of an idea that can be spread, incitement, but also being an insider, like having inside information, the initiated interpretation. And one of these symbols of the initiate and the initiatory society has always been the torch, the underground traditions, the caves, the torch in the dark, symbol of light in the dark. This is just symbolism, but I thought the term insider was appropriate because we're taking insider information. Like, we're not supposed to know about this stuff because we're not initiated. I mean, were you initiated? Did anybody pull you aside, take you into a dark room and explain to you how the fake news works, how they manipulate the masses, how we've all been lulled into complacency, and how we've all been part of some one world religion without even knowing it? No, nobody told us. None of us signed any blood oaths or anything, or NDAs. Virk Jones says instead of life imitates arts, it's psyops imitate predictive programming. Exactly. Because if you were a media literalist, if you just thought everything was as reported in the news and there's no connection with entertainment, you would say, wow, life follows Netflix. And it would be a truism. Everybody would say, yeah, life follows Netflix. They just have maybe they're psychic, they're lucky. Everything they put out happens to come true. And it makes sense, I guess. I mean, if you can believe that, but I can't. It's more likely that, well, ever since Leave the World Behind, I think the case has been made. Having the Obamas behind a movie chock full of predictive programming, that should tell you everything you need to know. It was just so ham-fisted. It was deliberate. This is the deliberate insertion of government messaging in all entertainment, but it's most pronounced in Netflix. Drinkwater said, I tried Hail UOAI. I had a picture of my cousin with his dog and said, make them kiss. And it turned into a photo and then into a video where he's snogging his dog and it looked very real. What is snogging? I hope it's snuggling. But the AI content is so real that you can't always tell the difference between real and fake. Sometimes, like on YouTube, if you upload videos, it'll say, check this box if you use AI elements. But it's getting closer and it's only going to get better. We can assume it's only going to get better. NA Literalist says Netflix can do spells. Right. Well, okay, so either Netflix is doing magic and they're manifesting these events by making people watch it. That's the magical simulation theory adjacent explanation where some people say, oh, well, we're feeding it our energy and we're manifesting it. And to me, that is one of the final guardrails that you have to jump over. If you get stuck on that, you'll never figure it out. No, we're not manifesting it. They're faking it. And the propaganda is aligned with the news because it's part of your perception management. It's putting things in your frame of reference. It's part of the propagandizing, the total propaganda environment. It's pretty much intrinsic. I call it systemic fakery. It's not like it's anomalous, it's not random, it's consistent. But if they can get you to think that this is some magical thing, then you'll never look for the meta scripters, the writers, and then you won't notice or you'll conveniently ignore the connections implied. When you talk about any psyop of any major size, any big scope psyop like a plane crash or mass shooting, look who's involved. DHS, police, hospitals, fire departments, actors, politicians. When you get into it, there's so many agencies involved that these have to be top down. Like these are not local operations. And beyond that, all of these psyops, no matter how many of us call them out as fake, they all end up in the history books as real. Like your perceptions don't matter. We're being collectively gaslit because your perceptions don't matter. It will be overridden by what is on the screen. What is on the screen, what the liar tells you, is going to be the accepted worldview. What you perceive, what you think, what you discern is of no consequence. And this is to teach you that your perceptions are feeble and that you should just filter everything through the screen. That's what 1984 was about. Joe Saunders says Russian vids used to go live and talk about the methods they use to brainwash, but YouTube added bell alerts and he got paranoid that everyone is cops in his chat. Russian vids. Didn't he change his name to Ukraine vids in support and solidarity with Zelensky? He talks about this stuff to some degree. He's also I'm not sure where he's at now with the whole flat earth thing now that I think about it. He probably thinks the final experiment was filmed in the Vegas sphere. But he's not a pure auto hoaxer. We have some discrepancies that I don't want to harp on, but I will say this. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to call everything fake. Like it's obvious it's all fake. But now I think is a point where we need to start applying nuance. Like what do we mean by fake? How do you qualify that statement? We can't just be knee-jerk contrarians about it. We have to have reasons to call things fake. You know, I actually talked to Russian vids on the phone for 6 hours once on Skype. When I was working with Dark Matter, we wanted him to be a host, and he's good friends with PK, and you know, I honestly didn't detect anything about him that made me think he was like a shill. I think he really does enjoy doing this type of research and conversing with people, but he's very guarded. I don't think he's a shill. If he was a shill, he wouldn't be against Dearth. I think they'd be on the same team. Michelle K says, "What do you think? Oh yeah, what are your thoughts on crisis actors keeping quiet? Is it rewards or threats or both?" I think it's rewards. It's a guaranteed career opportunity, and I think the reason why they don't spill the beans on it is that they sign NDAs, and the NDAs would be invalidated if they did anything criminal. So if people were really dying, they wouldn't need to hold that NDA up and say, I can't talk. They would be able to rip it up. So that's why you don't have any whistleblowers. And besides, if they did kill somebody, you would turn a legal propaganda event, a drill, into a war crime, into a significant event that would implicate so many people in different agencies. Like it would be a threat to the system to have any crisis actors out there who could reveal that somebody actually died for a fake news event. So no, nobody's dying. No crimes are being committed. I think they're well compensated, and I think there's upward mobility for them. These crisis actors. I mean, look at David Hogg. I mean, isn't he moving up? What is David Hogg's role now? I believe he just got promoted. Here we go. American gun control activist, and now he's serving as vice chair of the DNC. Vice chair of the DNC. Unbelievable. He said, we need to be a tsunami of content. Do you remember when he was doing die ins? After all his friends died in that horrible event, he goes to these supermarkets with all his friends and they pretend to be dead. And then they look at the shoppers and like, you did this. Your Second Amendment killed me. What's up, Marcel? Good morning from Holland. Drinkwater says, Michelle K, they sign NDAs. It's basically money. A single mom on benefits stays quiet. Yeah, I think that explains it. I mean, I hate to be cynical, but I put up an ad once. A friend and I, we were in our server and we were just, let's do an experiment. We put up a bunch of ads for crisis actors. And we said we said, we need you to fake die on TV, to lie, to fake cry, in order for us to put out some propaganda against guns. And we just put out an ad just being very upfront about what we needed. And I had so many emails, so many actors that wanted a gig that I had to shut off the ad. And I was only offering $50 a day. So think about all the out of work actors. Think about all the people who would pretty much take any role. Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to find people who would sell out everybody for a few $100s. And for anybody like Candace Owens is out there saying that 9/11 was real and that certain people are given advanced knowledge about it, um, that's a misdirection line. There were so many drills going on that day. You can read about this. Look at Operation Trident, or Tripod. You had 1,200 police academy noobs who are being used as crisis actors, as mass casualty simulation actors. So there's so many actors and agents or agencies and operations and drills going on that day. The idea that it was real should automatically be excluded from the conversation, unless you're going to maintain that in the midst of all these drills, a real attack happened. But then how come we don't have any accounts of people saying, yeah, we were doing a drill that day, we were pretending to be victims of a terror attack, and then a real one happened? Like nobody's saying that. And there's a reason why, obviously. Hero Paranormal says Crisis Actors Guild is huge. Go to Dugway Proving Grounds, they're hiring. Yeah, the GAGs, the Government Actors Guild. And everybody's a crisis actor if they believe the news. If you're a propaganda mule, if you're a crying wolf for something that doesn't exist, you're a crisis actor. And if you're not getting paid, that's on you. But it's no different. We've seen it. We've seen 2020, a nation of crisis actors, LARPers. Okay, so we talked about the Sim God. We talked about Luigi making 300K. Look at this sign. Washington Times. Judges ruling blocks Trump's ambitious agenda. DEI is an acronym. Equity is a human right. Eat the rich. So where have we seen eat the rich before? 4/19, 2024. Maxwell Azrello sets himself on fire outside the Trump courthouse on the anniversary of Waco, where Dave Koresh, 33, was incinerated. But Maxwell Azrello was pictured wearing a shirt that said "Eat the Rich." This is significant. It ties into the Joker narrative of "Kill the Rich," which was reiterated with Luigi. So eat the rich, kill the rich, class warfare. Not a coincidence here. And BLM is ultimately Marxism. It's not specifically race anyway. It's about oppressed and oppressor. So this eat the rich thing is going somewhere, if you ask me. Sleepy Rana says, never forget the nurses practicing twerking drills during COVID. Yeah, we still haven't got to the bottom of those twerkers. What was the case? Were they real nurses and they were just let loose? Maybe the pharmacy was unlocked? Or were they actors hired to twerk in the empty hospitals? Because that doesn't make sense. You would think the hospitals would be ground zero for local areas of infection. Like you wouldn't want to go to the hospital unless it was absolutely necessary. So why would you hire a bunch of actors to go run around the halls and twerking and making TikTok videos. Doesn't make any sense. So it's more likely they were real nurses, but real nurses wouldn't act like that unless they were extremely high. Estevan says, it's terrible over here. Everyone's a fool. I have not one friend that is aware of this stuff. I can't stand to be around people. I was happy when I was ignorant. Oh well. Hmm. The woke crowd has this antagonistic feeling towards the people who are asleep, the normies. Like, oh, why aren't you awake to this threat? The oppressive systemic racism and the fascism, the xenophobia. Like the woke people are really annoyed that nobody else around them really echoes or understands them because they're enlightened to a certain degree about things that the normies don't care about. Truthers have the same issue. And it's because the more fringe you are, the less you're going to find yourself in agreement with people who are like, mainstream. So I understand it can be alienating. And I happen to think that the fringes are meant to alienate you, to make you instead want to retreat back to Normieville because the blue pill's more comfortable. And that's why I say don't disturb the blue pillars. If they're dreaming, if they're happily, blissfully dreaming, leave them to it. Why wake them up? The people who are worth trying to engage with are already somewhat agitated and moving in the right direction. And that would be Trutherville. But to solve the issue of the alienation, of being kind of like more or less outgrouped in a way. I mean, it is kind of alienating and isolating to be the only person who seems to be having any level of situational awareness when it comes to the propaganda. I think the solution is just to recognize the boxes that people are in. And you talk to people based on their frame of reference. So if you're around normies, you just got to have their frame of reference. Don't expect anything outside of it. And since taking that view, I never bring up stuff that's outside of their realm of expertise or experience, outside their purview. I just lowered my expectations. And I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's better than generating friction and it's better than getting annoyed at their lack of curiosity, especially when you have a think tank. Because before this think tank, I didn't have a single person I could converse with about synchronicity, for example. In my real life or in my meatverse life, I don't know anyone familiar with any of these things that we talk about. They just seem incurious, they don't care, and it can make you feel crazy if you're the only person who talks about these things. And once I came onto the internet, I realized, wait, there are all kinds of people who think about these things, but we're just kind of separated geographically. So I use the think tank to create a platform to fill in that void. And I do think there's a big void. And I think that there are far more people who would be receptive to filling this void than it would seem right now, just because it's not that popular. But there are certain areas that I think have been underserved, specifically objectivist viewpoints, skeptical viewpoints in particular. And I even think that the argumentation that supports atheism doesn't have a good platform. It doesn't have a place where it has relevant context. Because there are no real atheists if the default position of someone who claims atheism is to buy into the state God constructs supplied by scientism. You're not an atheist if you take faith as a if you have faith in space travel, you have faith in scientism, if you have faith in any of the modern contemporary myths because you saw it on TV, you've fallen outside of, I think, you've fallen outside of a real scientific view or worldview. You're not really an atheist at that point. But the my point of bringing up atheism is that the way to deconstruct these God constructs that they've given us is to use the approach of rejecting the appeal to authority and rejecting faith and replacing it with instead logic and reason. Like you shouldn't believe the news because you saw it on the news, but that's where people are at. And it's really not a good enough reason to believe something. Not in 2025 when everything's fakeable. I believe in whale-sized clownfish because I've seen them on TV. Like, no, that's not good enough. But I have. And the ones that I saw were so compelling that I was fooled. Drinkwater says, when normies talk about the news, I end up talking about it. I try to play devil's advocate and show them the other side, but I always end up arguing and never get to the point that both sides are fake. Yeah, I kind of get that, but where do you even start? The truth doesn't matter if somebody's in the sea of irrelevance. You've got to be on the raft. So the idea here is, when I say the sea of irrelevance, is that you could tell somebody the truth, like, oh, Trump is a magician and he faked the ear injury. Well, someone might grasp that and see it, but that isolated fact doesn't mean anything if it's not put in the context of, oh, by the way, Secret Service was in on it, AP was in on it, all media was in on it, the people behind him were in on it. It was a closed movie set. The police, the doctor at the White House, every single governmental agency attached to Trump was all a part of it. That the mass media, left and right, at the top levels, were in on it. So unless you look at the isolated fact of that fakery in the context of the wider infrastructure where that type of fakery is even possible, it doesn't matter. There are a lot of leftists I've noticed on Twitter who are calling Trump's ear wound a staged event, but they believe everything else is real. That's my point. If you believe all the other fake news, then finding one factual piece of information isn't going to make a difference. You're still lost. You're submerged. You have to be outside the box, off-world stage. Drinkwater says the big thing is people don't care. Yeah, that's the other part of it. It's apathy. Why would they care? And you know what's revealing about it is this. I was having a conversation right after the 10/7 thing with Hamas Israel, and someone had said to me, "Yeah, you hear that they decapitated 40 babies?" And I said, "Yeah, look how nice the weather is today." And they said, "Yeah, it's great." And we started talking about the weather. Now, I was able to take a conversation about 40 decapitated babies, and at the drop of a dime, just changed it to talking about the weather, something inconsequential. That didn't bother this person because these are equally um, weighty propositions. Like, it doesn't matter. They're apathetic. They don't care. But they believe these things are real. That was my point. Like, I don't believe it was real, so it's easy for me to dismiss it. But for someone who believes it's real, to dismiss it reveals a deep underlying sense of detachment. And that's what I mean by apathy. They're like, oh, we believe in nukes. We believe we're probably going to die from global warming. We believe in mass shooters, but we're able to conveniently ignore it. You can't get through to someone like that. And I don't think it's worth the effort or the time if someone's not looking for it. If anything, you're talking about deprogramming somebody from a cult mindset. They should be paying you like you're a therapist because this is a valuable service. And it would take a lot of work to even extract somebody. And that's not our business. Telling people what to believe, no. I'm making the case for skepticism, and applying that skepticism, you will arrive at the right answers. The reason people don't arrive at the right answers is their approach to consuming media is wrong. It's passive, and it accepts the screen as an authority. So Barack and Michelle Obama started Higher Ground Productions. Some are saying that U.S. aid had a hand in it. Did we taxpayers pay for our own Netflix propaganda? Probably. We talked about this. Kanye West spent millions on his bizarre Super Bowl ad promoting Yeezy, then scrubbed it only to leave a swastika shirt. Item number HH. And again, Shopify pulled his account, and he's a billionaire, so why is he using Shopify? I don't know. Curvature seen from the ISS. Look how insecure they are. They can't just say, here's the Earth. They got to say, look, there's curvature. Take that, flat earthers. Everything from NASA is specifically targeted at flat earthers. It's like, why? Don't you think that flat earthers are deficient, detached from reality, just conspiracy theorists? They don't have a point. Like, you don't see National Geographic constantly debunking Bigfoot believers or going after those who believe in chupacabras. Like, they don't waste their time. They promote alien belief on all the mainstream Science Channel type shows, but why do they spend so much effort in a very kind of catty way going after flat earthers? Curvature seen from the ISS. And I'm sorry, to my eyes, this looks less convincing than the whale-sized clownfish that I saw on TikTok. It doesn't look real to me. Do I have to accept this as evidence? To my trained eyes, this is not a video camera recording the land from a high altitude. This is a simulation inside and out. Or maybe it's a camera with a model and a big screen in the background, like rear screen projection. But no. This makes the final experiment look real. Is anybody convinced by this? I wish I was. I happen to like science fiction. I like the spaceships and aliens. I think it's cool. I think dragons are cool in a way. Doesn't mean I believe they're real. I'm actually reading a book now called Hell's Gate by David Weber, and it's about this portal that facilitates the collision between two universes. And one of them is technologically advanced, much like our world today, and the other group is more like medieval, but they have dragons. But there's no space travel. All of the travel throughout this multiverse is facilitated through these portals. And so they're able to find these portals and go to new worlds and harvest the resources. Really intriguing stuff. Kind of military sci-fi. And we live in a science fiction universe. Science fiction has, for the most part, I think, been used to provide the visuals for the paradigm they've given us. Like when I look at NASA art, deep space art, I'm like anything from the James Webb Telescope, I'm like, that's religious art. That's the priesthood showing you the heavens. And space does represent heaven. It represents mankind's future, our eternity as a multi-planetary species. Drinkwater says, I try to buy toys for my baby nephew. Everything's dinosaurs and space stuff, toys and clothes, heavy on the programming. Yeah, the dinosaur thing, a lot of people say they don't believe in dinosaurs. I'm fine with that, but I think it's important to have reasons, like why don't you believe it? What do you find dubious about it? Is it the timeline? Is it that all of these skeletons are just made of plaster that came from China? Like, what has convinced you that these things don't exist? But we have to have some nuance because unfortunately, the field of dinosaur denialism is full of people who are simply anti-science. Anti-science is the wrong direction. Is this science versus religion? Is one of these dialectics they've set up to keep people locked in this eternal warfare. If anything, you just need to separate science from religion. And this is one of my criticisms of simulationism. Simulationism, the whole simulation, not theory, but hypothesis, is a mix of science and religion. And when science gets mixed with religion and faith, it ceases to be science. So you shouldn't be anti-science. You should be anti-religion mixed with science. Because science, again, is simply a methodology. It's not a belief system. So dinosaur denialism needs to have a more substantive refutation than Darwin is just trying to convince us of Darwinism. Wasn't Darwin a Christian anyway? Adam Mann says, in my upcoming book, I reveal the truth about aliens. You should call in. Not tonight. My phones aren't on this computer, but If you want to promote it and talk about it, I'm interested. Like, for example, right now, the big propaganda push, specifically among the right, is that aliens are demons. And one of these demons crawled into bed with Tucker Carlson and ran its claws down his back, scratched him up, scarred him, left him bleeding in bed. Ask him. Tucker Carlson says that a demonic alien scratched his back up. And nobody's questioned him on this. That's insane to me. Nobody's questioned him. They just believe it. But the trend is that the right wing is being taught that aliens are evil, and the left thinks that aliens are saviors. And that's because aliens are angels for the atheists. But why this bifurcation? Well, for the same reason the right wing thinks that illegal aliens are evil, and the left loves illegal aliens. You see how they split it? So I look at aliens as mostly a construct, but if you have information about real interdimensional extraterrestrials or something, I would like to know. Art of Thinking Out Loud, Common Sense Analytics says, have you watched the series Paradise? About 25,000 government chosen living underground after the surface is destroyed. Wow. Sounds kind of like Fallout. But that's exactly what I think we're looking at here. So if you look at the story of Noah's Ark, the surface is about to be flooded, so you get in the ark. Uh, Today you have Scientology, which is known to have underground bases. There's one in New Mexico here, and the news try to cover it, and they actually shut the story down. But they have these underground bases where all of the writings of L. Ron Hubbard are etched into titanium plates. And the idea is that when we destroy the world, because we're going to, they can come out and put us all on the same sheet. They can convert all the survivors to Scientology. But the idea of the ark, of having the chosen group and wiping out everybody else and starting new, is kind of a thing. If you haven't seen it, the Netflix show The 100, same thing. In the future, AI takes over, AI government, and it decides man's going to destroy the climate, so it nukes mankind, except for 100 teenagers they put onto an ark. And when they turn 18, it gets sent back down to Earth to repopulate. But the idea of the phoenix, of revolution, of destroying and rebuilding on the ashes, that's kind of implied here. But this theme of, like you said in Paradise, sounds like predictive programming. Drinkwater says, not promoting Eric Dubai, but he did do a good synopsis from the Royal Society to the latest Chinese plaster of Paris museum stuff. Yeah, Dubai's got some good stuff, some good content. But I think he was, I don't know, he's too aloof. He's kind of aloof. I'm not sure why. I don't have any issue against him, but it is kind of fishy when you have these popular characters in any area who, once they get any traction, they suddenly fall in love with Hitler. It's like, why would you do that? Why can't you wait? Can't you just keep it to yourself? Bach Precision says the history of the first dinosaur discoveries are suspicious, as is the father of dinosaurs, Richard Owen, a colleague of Darwin. Drinkwater says Tucker Carlson said he slept with his wife and 3 dogs and woke up with claw marks and said it was a demon. Yeah, he said it was a demon, but he also said that aliens are demons. Unless aliens and demons are two different things. Or aliens. I mean, I've heard different takes on it. I've heard that aliens are actually demons wearing these suits that allow them to come to the surface. And if you took off the suit, you'd see scales and horns. Isabel Ann says it was a paper mache alien. So it was like paper cuts. Do those scar? Because he says he's got scars. Now, I think the dinosaur psyop, though, comes down to this. When you're a child, you're inundated with dinos. All the TV shows, talking dinosaurs. You got the purple dinosaur that the kids would hug and sing songs with. And then you get to school and they're like, oh, by the way, extinction. Your first lesson, the kindergarten, day one. They put it on the board. They write down mass extinction. and you're taught that a big rock came down and killed all the dinosaurs. So you just spent the first 5 years of your life playing with toy dinosaurs. And then you go to school and they're like, yeah, these are all dead. Science tells us. And at any moment, a big rock could wipe us out. So extinction is like the first thing you're taught. And I read in Fritz Sprickmeyer's book on how to create an Illuminati mind-controlled slave that what they do to the MK Ultra victim when they're young is they give them a pet and they kill the pet in front of them in order to fracture them and control their minds. And I'm like, well, maybe that's what they do with dinosaurs. They build up the dinosaurs, and then the first time you're in school, they kill them in front of you. Like, I think there's something traumatic, like it's traumatic mind control in some way. I don't gives an F about you says my siblings love dinosaurs. I think dinosaurs are cool. I do. I like Godzilla. I think these are neat. But I don't know if they're real or if these are contemporary myths or a cover story for dragons and giants. Thur says it was probably Rittenhouse who gave Tucker the scratchers during their slumber parties going over the Kenosha script. Drinkwater says, where is Restream Bot streaming from? Is there a parallel stream somewhere else? Yeah, Restream Bot forwards the chats from Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and DLive into one central place. Vertgen said, I recently heard Augustus Caesar was into collecting the bones of giants, which scientists today say were actually dinosaur bones. You know, when I first went to a Masonic lodge, it was in El Paso. I went into a Scottish Rite temple, and there was a huge collection of Smithsonian magazines. And at the time, I was researching how the rumor was that these archaeological institutions were used to gather up all the evidence of giants and then repackage it as something else. And at the time, I thought maybe there is some sort of like systemic cover up within the field of anthropology in order to rewrite our history. And in a way, like for example, does anyone here think the pyramids are ancient and it's a mystery as to how they were built? Because that was always conveyed as some kind of a mystery when they might have been made by some more simple means than aliens, and they might only be a few hundred years old. And so when it comes to dinosaurs, what's the incentive? Well, if you can make the claim that this thing existed at a previous time when the conditions were right, you can backdate your narrative and you can say the earth is this old. So it can be supportive of everything else. So it's a big win for the worldview that you're trying to create if you're able to provide evidence of this time period, a vast hundreds of millions of years in the past ago. It's like, well, that's a lot of space to work with for everything else you want to promote. I don't believe in necessarily the whole big picture they give us. I'm not saying I don't believe in evolution. However, I'm just very careful about it. I don't want to just reject it because, like, again, anti-science is not the way to go. Science versus, like, science is Satan's religion. Like, come on. That kind of superstition, that kind of ignorance is a weapon against you, in my opinion. Candace Owens is doing sabotage. They want to make you think that to be a truther is to be anti-science. And it's like, it shouldn't be that way at all. It shouldn't be anti-science. Again, it has to do with recognizing where science ends and special effects begin. Thank you, Marcel. Brought in a box of titanium blue wrenches. So David Hazel, lasers, Daniel Morris, Slow Boy Whiteboard have all received the coveted blue wrench, and same with Emmy Lou. If you want a link to all the different places where you can listen live, go to ips.monster. Marcel says, apart from if dinos look real or fake, they look like big birds. Yeah, I think so. I was watching a roadrunner carry a horned toad, and it looked to me like a velociraptor. Like from the perspective of a lizard, it's a velociraptor. I don't give an F says I was kind of sad when I heard they could be made up. Well, even if they're not made up, you know, there is something of bit of artistic license. There is a like they've been undergoing changes. I've noticed recently a lot of dinosaurs are now portrayed as feathery and colorful, not just big slimy lizards. Art of Thinking Aloud says, remember the story about the Asian guy who designs the dinosaur skeletons for museums? He admitted he made up a lot of dinosaurs. Well, see what they do is they find a bone, and then from that they extrapolate the entire dinosaur. And as a child, you think, oh, they found a dinosaur. So I remember digging holes and thinking I might find a stegosaurus. You just find one bone, there's another and another, and you do this whole excavation. But that's not really how it happens in real life. And I think they dress it up a bit to make it more interesting. And I think it'd be so easy to fake. Like if you told me, hey, there's this grant money here, if you could find us a stegosaurus, and then I'll be like, yeah, I found a little bone. I'm not gonna tell them I got it from KFC during my lunch break. Yeah, I think I found a stegosaurus spike. I'll need a few $1 million. And then we close off the set, and with that kind of a budget, I could just make one as I go. Like it wouldn't be hard to make one. Lean Dion says dino fossils started getting discovered when they started pushing Darwinism and evolution. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a way of establishing a timeline for their entire story. Drinkwater says, no, we are the most pro-real science that there is. We're anti-religious scientism. Exactly. It's a trap. You have progressive utopianism versus this idealized past, and there's this tug of war. And they want the idealized past, those who reject the progressive utopianism, to reject science altogether and embrace religion instead. Whereas their version is, let's reject religion and anything that's not just materialistic and reductionist, and at the same time, their science has become a religion. So these are both losing propositions. Bach Precision says, same with Owen Benjamin, the Amish lifestyle psyop, anti-science, anti-tech. Yeah, exactly. There's so many dialectics. It's all a schism in everything. You got urban versus rural, science versus religion, which is more or less science as religion versus traditional religion. And the right is motivated by moral panics. The left is motivated by panicdemics about the pandemics, where their version of sin is now called the virus, and the non-believers are the unvaxxed. There's a perfect split down the middle. All you need is a big tooth and you can extrapolate T-Rex as my third eye. I heard Charles Darwin was a Christian, which I think would go against the idea that he was fomenting a satanic plot to discredit Christianity. Joe Santos says there's a story that a town thought they found the spine of a dinosaur, took pictures of the papers, they got huge crowds until someone pointed out it was an old well drill, broken in 25 pieces. Well, there's money and plenty of incentives to find and discover anything. And look how quick people are to believe in things. This drone thing, and I'm writing an article about the drones for the next issue of The Insider. This thing with the drones tells us everything we need to know about low standards of evidence and the desire to believe and how that influences what people are going to accept as plausible or real. You have to go up against the will to the want to believe. People want to believe in aliens, so they're susceptible to it. People want easy answers. But, the truth of it is, and we're uncovering it here all the time, there's only one conspiracy you should care about. There's only one real conspiracy. The one real conspiracy is the single monolithic government and the co-opting of all entertainment media for the purposes of bolstering and supporting the incoming fake news events. In other words, the total hijacking of our worldview. The fact is a worldview monopoly, and our history is written in advance and performed for us on the world stage, so the power elite can maintain a total control over our frame of reference. That is the big conspiracy. And yeah, dinosaur fakery, alien fakery, these are all parts of it. And it's these big points of agreement that form your worldview. If they can get us all to agree on dinosaurs, well, then we all agree on the age of the Earth. And we all agree on mass extinction. We all agree on space rocks. If you believe in dinosaurs, you must therefore believe in big space rocks, outer space, and the possibility of the Earth being taken out by a planet killer asteroid. So there's a cluster of things that come along with it. It's like a Trojan horse. So you believe in dinosaurs while you believe in space. So these things are, I think, worth confronting, these foundational myths. So I don't not believe in dinosaurs necessarily, but now that I think about it, yeah, they're probably fake and dumb. Anyway, thanks again for joining. I'll try to put the archives together in a coherent way. I noticed they were kind of split up because I had to switch computers, but this one seems to be a lot more stable. So I look forward to kind of smoothing things out. And again, IPS Insider should be arriving at your mailbox in the next day or so. So thanks again, and go to ips.monster. I don't give an F about you says, I notice they tend to conflate dinosaurs with space. Yeah, one more point on this. They say that when the Earth was hit 66 million years ago by I think it was a 33-mile diameter space rock, they said that it hit the Earth so hard, punctured the atmosphere, that it actually sprayed like a super soaker. The Earth sprayed ocean and biomatter on the face of the moon, and that therefore it can be reasonably assumed that there are dinosaur bones on the moon. Anyway, this is Chief Crow, Dinosaurs in Space.
Dinosaurs in space.